Hi everyone, my name is Juju and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the coordinator for student organizations. Today's leadership presentation is going to be talking about encouraging growth, leading with empathy, active listening, support, connection, and inclusion. These are our learning outcomes for today. We are going to go through empathetic leadership, so understanding the role of empathy and how it can help us grow within our teams and communities. We're going to talk about active listening. We're going to do a activity on active listening. We're also going to talk about supportive leadership, so learning these strategies to create these environments and connection building. So talking about how empathy is going to build those relationships and then talking about inclusive leadership, which leads to diverse perspectives and experiences, and being able to include those, but also consider those in decision making in that realm. So, first, we're going to start with empathetic leadership. So, think about when you hear the word empathy, what do you think of? Feel free to jot down a couple of words if you'd like, or just think about them. But empathy overall is the ability to comprehend and share the feelings of other people with kindness and intelligence, resulting in healthier communication. So it's really this realm of I'm putting myself in your shoes to be able to better understand and connect and see where you're coming from. And there's a lot of ways to go about being an empathetic leader. So, some characteristics of an empathetic leader is fostering that sense of purpose and community and belonging within the team. So, thinking about what steps are you taking to make sure that people feel a part of the group that you are a part of, anticipating the needs of team members, and recognizing when extra support is needed there. This could be used, any of this presentation could be used for connections with your friends, your relationships, your teamwork, your work, your schooling, all of that sort of stuff. And anticipating the needs of others is not something that is easy, but I think that we can usually tell when certain things are needed, especially during busy seasons or things like that. So being able to anticipate those needs of your team helps for them to not feel burnt out. You're able to kind of get ahead of things before they get bad. Active listening, we'll talk about that in just a little bit, but making a conscious effort to really listen to what people have to say, and being present and engaged when people are speaking. So watching your, nonverbal communication when you're actively listening, summarizing, following up, being able to understand the backgrounds of others. Obviously, we've not experienced everything that everyone has experienced around us, but we can take the time to kind of understand that and show that genuine care for what's happening. And then just creating an environment where team members feel safe to express their opinions and their ideas. Everyone is valued in the space. So being able to approach things from that lens is really helpful. It's really about just taking the extra second to think about things, think about how people would feel afterwards, because we are human at the end of the day. And so just taking that extra time to be considerate. You may have listened to some other presentations about the type of leadership, but democratic leadership plays a big role here. Thinking about just taking the time to hear what everyone at the table has to say before decisions are made or actions are taken. Some empathy and practice. So thinking about how to kind of go through the different levels of empathy and how we go about these. You've got your first kind of level one surface conversations. It's small talk, it starts out really casual. This is where most people start at. You've got your level two where we're sharing some more in-depth information about schedules, updates, and other information. We're having workplace conversations. We're getting a little more comfortable with things. And then level three, we're sharing ideas and opinions and a little bit about yourself, and why things should be implemented. So we've passed this point. We're getting comfortable with one another. We're starting to open up a little bit. We're getting more in depth, and you've created that space for your team. Level four is when you start to share those importance and why things are important to you and what you care about. And then level five is when you connect your feelings and values to experiences, and relationships are open and honest. And so you've really reached that peak kind of community with your team. And so these flow in and out. and every person is going to be at a different level at different times. And so knowing where you're at with everybody is really important. Again, there may be different levels for different people at different times. These may not even come into play. There may be different levels with certain people, and maybe certain people aren't open to these levels. But this is the general kind of flow of how empathy in practice goes. Here's some data-driven information about empathy if you're into data. So 61% of employees with highly empathetic senior leaders and 47% with highly empathetic managers were reported to be innovative at work, right? So we're feel like we're able to be more open and express our ideas and feel like they won't be wasted. We feel like they'll be valued in this space. It boosts that engagement, right? I feel valued. I feel comfortable here. I want to be here. I have that buy-in. I want to be a part of this team. And then the work-life kind of balance, they say that it shouldn't be a balance because your life is more important. And that is so true. But thinking about that they've, are better at managing that experience, right? They're not burning out themselves, and they're really valuing the work that's being done, but also still valuing themselves as humans. And then it fosters that inclusivity, right? So we've got this space where we feel valued, we feel included, we feel heard, and that's just what anybody wants at the end of the day. And so knowing that empathetic leadership really, really plays a role in that. And so empathy isn't this, big drawn out emotional thing. Okay, next up, we're going to talk about active listening. Just to preface, you will need a piece of paper, or you can use your phone to draw, but you will need a piece of paper and something to draw with, like I said, or your phone for this piece. So active listening. Some of us think that are really good at active listening, but it really does take some very intentional kind of steps to ensure that we're participating in active listening as much as we can. And so this graphic is really helpful and just kind of simplifies things in active listening. And so for this first piece, you can see that, right, we're giving our undivided attention, right? We're not on our phones. We're not looking at a computer screen. We're in a quiet space where, people aren't really around, we're giving our undivided attention to that person and the things that are happening in that space. Tip number 2, we're making a genuine response that makes the speaker feel heard. So, right, we're nodding our head, we're saying, yeah, I hear you. We're asking that person maybe what they need in this moment. We're giving those summaries of what they said. We're following up. We're doing those sort of things to make sure that they feel heard in that moment. We're making mental notes, right, to kind of make sure that we're following along. But remember that we're not doing the mental notes in order for us to respond. We're making the mental notes so that we can be sure that we're following with the conversation. Tip number 4, think about, again, going back to that empathy piece of things, right? How is this person likely to respond in this situation? How is this person feeling, right? What is their body language? What is their energy like? What could you say that's going to make this worse? What could you say that could be helpful in this moment? And just thinking about those things. Pause before responding. And craft that response, right? And I think that it's okay for you to be like, hey, I just need a minute. I want to be sure that I'm giving you the right words that you need in this moment. Or, hey, I don't have an answer for you right now, but I am invested in finding something out about this. Can I get back to you? And then the last piece is just asking those questions, right? So you said this, but what did you mean by this? What can I do to support you in this moment? How can I help you kind of, move and navigate through this? And when you said this, did you mean this or did you mean this? And then down there is just some tips and stuff about staying engaged in the conversation, building up your emotional IQ, thinking about what that looks like. And sorry, I'm trying to make sure I can pull up this bottom piece. Okay, you can see it there now. Oh, now I've just messed up the whole thing. That's embarrassing. It's fine. Um, but paying attention to what's being said, um, and focusing on um, making the conversation about that person and kind of getting to the nitty gritty there. Sorry about the technical difficulties. All right, so the active listening activity that we're going to do real quick, I'm going to give you a list of instructions to draw a bug. I'm going to read out each statement one single time, and you are going to just listen to what I'm saying, and you're going to draw what you think is being said. You can't ask questions. Obviously, we're online, so you can't talk to each other. But just do your best, go with your first instinct, and just really listen to the things that are being said. Remember, you're drawing a bug. The first statement is, the bug is round. The second statement is, the bug has 8 legs grouped in pairs with 4 legs on the left and 4 legs on the right. In the pairs, one leg is longer than the other. Number 3, the bug has 2 eyes on top of the body. And feel free to pause the recording at any time as well to do what you need to do. Number 4, the bug has 2 squiggly antennas. Number 5, the bug has 2 pea pod shaped wings. Number 6, the bug has a spot next to each wing. Number 7, the bug has a triangular stinger on the bottom of the body. Number 8, the bug has 2 feelers on each foot, one longer than the other, both coming from the same side of the leg. Number 9, the bug has a round mouth placed between the 2 eyes. Number 10, the bug laid 5 square eggs to the left of the stinger. And just take a couple more seconds to finish up your bug drawing, and then I will show you what it is supposed to look like. This is what your bug should have looked like. It is okay if your bug is completely different. It is okay if your bug is not even remotely similar to this. The whole point of this is to realize how difficult it is to actively listen without being able to ask questions or know that we are, or the realization that we're showing up with different perspectives, right? When I hear pea pod, I may think of something completely different than what you might have thought of, or I may have drawn them on the outside of the body and not necessarily from this like aerial above view. And so it's really important to be able to ask those questions. It's really important to know that we all have different interpretations, that we're all showing up in different spaces, and that things are just different for all of us. And so when we're able to actively listen and use that empathy, we're able to show up differently for one another and for our teams and as a leader. So just keep this in mind when you're actively listening about how, you may hear something, but it may be completely different than what's actually happening. And so that it's important to ask questions. It's important to be able to have conversations and kind of flow through this thing together with your groups. And thinking about the advantages that you have when you aren't just given blanketed statements, but are able to kind of have a dialogue and that active listening piece. And if you weren't active listening in that, right? Like if you may have been distracted, or let's say an airplane flew over while you were doing this, you may have lost that active listening there. And so knowing how important it is to stay present and knowing what you need to do to stay present in the moment as well is extremely important. Let's talk about supportive leadership, right? So think about some of these things that pop in your head when you think of supportive leadership. Again, feel free to jot them down or just think about them while we're kind of going through this. And so supportive leadership is a leadership style that prioritizes the needs and well-being of the team members, right? It's focusing on building that trust, open communication, and empowering individuals to contribute to the team, right? So we kind of already talked about these things with the empathetic leadership and showing up for one another, but really knowing that the needs of the team are far more important than most things. And so it increases the team morale. You're going to have better productivity. You're going to have higher job satisfaction. You're going to have stronger team cohesion. Think about when you've been on teams before, whether that's in a group project or at work or in high school or at any moment. And when you feel like you're not being supportive, how does that make you feel? What happens? What happens to your productivity? What happens to the quality of the work that you're doing? And so knowing that showing up for others is a really, really good way to lead and is a memorable way to be a leader in spaces with teams. But it really is going to add to that team dynamic, right? It's going to make conflict less, or when there is conflict, because conflict is inevitable, that conflict is going to be easier to navigate through because you have this support and you have this foundation of trust and this open communication. There's some key elements of supportive leadership. So we've already spent a lot of time talking about active listening. So thinking about how important it is for people to be heard, how more productive conversations are when we're actively listening. Thinking about positive feedback and recognition, right? So supporting and uplifting and celebrating the good things that are happening. And it's really easy to just focus on the negative in life, at work, in school, in all of the things, but being able to take the time and really focus on that positive feedback and recognizing those things and learning how your team wants to be recognized, right? Some people want you to scream it for the rooftops, and some people just want it to be, you know, a sticky note on their door or something simple. Thinking about delegation and empowerment, right? We all have a role to play, but it's really important to delegate, and that being able to trust and support folks through that delegation of giving people new tasks to do that will, you know, result in their career development or their professional development. And that they feel empowered in those things and empowered to ask for help or empowered to step out of the comfort zone and be innovative and think outside of the box. We've talked a little bit about this open communication, right? The open communication is going to be crucial. But it's hard to have that open communication when you don't feel like you're in an environment that supports you. And then conflict resolution, just like we said a minute ago. If I feel supported, conflict is inevitable. It's going to happen. It's a positive thing. It means that growth is happening if handled correctly. When you feel supported, conflict resolution is easier, right? Because we know we're all coming to the table from the same page and that we really do want to work to get back to, you know, our foundations and work through this conflict together to make each other better and the team better. Let's talk about connections. Why is connection so important? So again, just take a moment to yourself to think about why you think building connections is important. And so building connections means that you're creating those strong relationships, right? We don't have to be the best of friends. We don't have to go get ice cream after work or whatever it might be together. But at work, we have a strong sense of respect. We're fostering that open communication. You're seeing some themes here of empathy and active listening, understanding needs. We're collaborating better because these things exist. We've got more effective leadership. We've got trust. We're building a network where people feel valued and connected. And so just thinking about that, it's the simplest of things, right? Thinking about things that we have in common, thinking about things that we don't have in common. How can we connect there? What experiences do we have that are similar? How do we communicate? What's our favorite color, right? Like it could be as simple as that to build those connections and bring that human aspect to the foreground. Again, here's some key aspects of those connections. We've talked about a lot of these, and they're showing up over and over again because they're foundations of effective leadership and foundations of growth throughout your time as leader and with a team. And so, effective communication, empathy, building that trust, right? Asking people what they need, hearing them out, active listening, that mentorship and coaching, offer them support systems, offer them the opportunity to learn from you, networking, right? Putting them in spaces that they need to be in or making those connections there, setting the example, right? Being a role model for these folks, and then celebrating those successes, right? It's so important to celebrate success and thinking about all the things that we do on a daily basis and that those connect us together, because we all have a similar goal in mind. Again, similar benefits of connections as some of our other topics here for encouraging growth, but thinking about that increased engagement and productivity, right? Nobody wants to show up to a staff meeting and be miserable. We want to be engaged. We want to be excited about being there. Again, we don't have to show up with pom-poms and dancing and all of that sort of stuff, but we're excited to be there and contribute to the work that's being done because we feel connected to it and connected to the people that are doing it. Improve problem solving. Again, we're going to feel comfortable thinking outside the box. We're going to feel safe. We're going to feel encouraged to do those things, right? The culture is going to be great. You're going to enhance your influence and your credibility when you build those connections, right? Because you've got these people that are vouching for you, but also not just in verbal, but in action as well. They can see those things happening and why that credibility needs to be there. Let's talk about inclusive leadership as our last portion here before we wrap up. Inclusive leadership is a crucial element. It's about cultivating an environment where everyone feels valued, heard, and empowered, regardless of who they are. So thinking about, again, we're all human. We're all here with the common goal. And that we're just moving beyond just managing a team, but actively creating a space where everyone can thrive. The things that we talked about previously, so empathy, connections, supportive leadership, active listening, all contribute to this inclusive leadership. My experiences, my past, who I am as a human, if those things are valued and celebrated and encouraged, there's going to be this space of inclusive leadership, and it's going to lead to that innovation. It's going to add to that embracement of different perspectives and differing opinions and be able to work through those things together, right? We're developing that cultural intelligence. We're having that consciousness of bias, right? We all have it, whether it's implicit or explicit. We all have biases. So being able to take a second to think about what those are for you and how those show up in spaces, and what you can do to actively fight those implicit biases, right? So those things in your subconscious that you have a bias for based on how you grew up, things that you've seen in the media, et cetera, et cetera. Thinking about how to call those forward and address them. Active listening and empathy, we've said it a million times at this point. It promotes that collaboration, right? So we want to be able to collaborate with one another, no matter where we're coming from, and be able to benefit one another. We're open to feedback, right? We want to grow, we want to learn, we want to be able to do all of these things. And then championing diversity, thinking about that we want this to be a diverse space and we want this to be a space where everyone feels valued and included, and we want to celebrate that, and encourage that to be the case, and that everyone here feels welcome to contribute and is a valued member of the team. There's some benefits. Some of the other things that we've talked about in previous sections of this. We've got our enhanced decision making, right? So we're thinking outside the box. We're coming up with more creative solutions, probably better solutions, because we're putting together all of our powers and coming up with these together. We're engaged, we feel valued, we're included, we're engaged in the work that we're doing, we're motivated to do it, we want to be here, we want to show up. Team morale, right? We've got strong team dynamics and collaboration. We want to work together. We don't want to stay in our cubicle. And then we're developing those self-awareness and that empathy and that cultural competency for that professional development piece of things that are so important for humans, but especially leaders. Here's how you can develop some of those inclusive leadership skills, right? So, taking that time, like I said just a moment ago, to do that self reflection, examining your own biases and your areas for improvement. Where did you grow up? Where are you coming from? How are you showing up in spaces? Um, what things have you experienced that have caused you to have some sort of biasy? Seek training, right? So participating in workshops focused on these things and thinking about what that looks like for you, whether it's watching a YouTube video or a TikTok video or attending a leadership workshop like this or any of the other ones that are happening on campus or visiting the case office, asking questions, seeking those things out, mentorship, right? So thinking about who can you learn from? Who is somebody that you trust and that you want to grow from and experience and learn how to be more inclusive in that space. And then observing and learning, right? So paying attention to how different team members interact. All right. If there's a space with all men and there's one woman and you're in that space and you're thinking about like what's going on here and that woman is constantly being talked over or ignored in that space, how do you observe that and advocate and learn about that and figure out how to improve in that space so that that doesn't happen to that employee or that team member? There's a lot you could do. There's a lot of resources. Starting somewhere is a start. You're not going to have it all figured out immediately, and that's totally okay. But thinking about where can you start right now and how can we get there? Um, if you have any questions or you need anything or want to chat, feel free to email me at any time or visit our website for leadership programs where you can learn all about all of the different things that we've got going on. And then, as always, feel free to follow us on social media to stay up to date with all the additional leadership things that are happening or opportunities for you to learn. Have a great day.